Hello and welcome to the NEWSPASTE podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore. I'm here today with someone who I've been working with, you could say, recently, because we've done a lot of, we're in the same sort of sphere of journalism anyway. But Tim Hinchliffe, who's going to be coming on to speak now, is someone who I met properly through TNT, and I have got on with him very well throughout that time. And we have the same sort of mindset with a lot of what's going on at the moment, globalism. And he's a really wonderful guy doing a load of good work, and I like it. Yes, yes, you, Tim, you can be seen. You can be seen. They can see you already. They can see you laughing at me, smoking on your pipe as I say words that are kind about you. But it's true. And you can find Tim over on sociable.co. You can find him on X as well, of course. Tim Hinchliffe, so by his own name. I always trust people who go by their own name, I have to say. I do like a little bit of that. And we're going to talk about a load of different things, including his journey into journalism, the journalism itself, the sort of areas that we cover together, the past, the present, and the future, which is usually what people do in these podcasts. And at the same time, my cat's also going to bite my finger and tell me off on occasions. So, Tim Hinchliffe, welcome to the NEWSPASTE podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Johnny. Doing wonderful, and it's really neat to join you on this type of format. You know, kind of more long term, and kind of laid back and informal. So it's not trying to rush to these kind of agenda things and things like that. So no, this is beautiful, and thanks. I like. I was just thinking about how you talked about journey into journalism. I was just thinking this word journeylism, which is a really nice thing we can talk about. So yeah, I'm looking forward to wherever this takes us.
Well, I mean, you've been taken, obviously, because your accent would betray your current location. Surely you're not a Colombian, are you, Tim?
No, I mean I do. Yeah, I do stick out like a sore thumb here. I am in the mountains, as might hear just chickens and roosters or cocks crowing in the background. Yeah, I am not native to this land. I have very pale skin. I have very blue eyes, and I stick out like a sore thumb. But no, this is a place I've called home for the past 10 years, and my journey to get here, it's been up and down. It's been things with visas and different working for free, doing internships, going back to the United States, going to Africa, going back to the United States, coming back here again. It's been a hell of a ride, but yeah, I am I'm an American living in Colombia. Yes.
I'm an American living in Colombia. It doesn't have so much of a ring, but I can shoehorn all those words into the song anyway. I tell you, it's a beautiful, like, South America is such a beautiful place. So I understand like why you'd end up in South America. Why Colombia? That's got to be a question to start off.
It goes back to the year 2011. I was living in Seattle,
Oh,
Washington.
wow. 2011. I remember that year well. Dangerous year. Go
Okay.
on.
Okay. Yeah. Um, Actually, yeah, because that's when I'll get into this later. But yeah, so I was living in Seattle, Washington. I was working at a French bistro, a creperie. So I was a crepist.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my
So I was a
Lord. You're
I was a
melting me
cook.
heart right now, Tim. Go on.
So I could do do two crepes at the same time with hands going in different directions, semi-clockwise, counterclockwise, rather clockwise. So I was doing that for a few years, and I could barely make rent. I was living in the Fremont district, right on Fremont Avenue of Seattle, which is the whole bohemian, really hippie kind of hipster kind of area. But I was, what, 4 years out of college, out of university, and I had studied linguistics, got my bachelor's degree in that. But I was also working next to people who were not from the country, didn't speak the language, and were illegal almost for the same pay. And so I was like, I I want to do something. So I did the digital equivalent of spinning the globe. So all I did was get on a search engine and just searched like writing gigs or writing opportunities, internship, world, or whatever. And one of the first things that popped up was something for Medellin, Colombia, to work for free to be an intern at a publication called Colombia Reports. And it was done through some, I can't remember it was done through like a third party company. So I would have to pay them. And then all of a sudden they would put me up for 3 months, give me one to two meals a day, pay for, take care of all the lodging and stuff. And so I would just have to go there and be an intern in the newsroom. So I used to report on the guerrillas, the FARC, las FARC, and politicians, corruption, assassination, rebels, paramilitaries, but then also light stuff like beauty models and just kind of weird gossip stuff. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth into that. Yeah, and my editor, whom I love to this day, he lives in the same place. He's a Dutch anarchist, smokes like 2 packs a day, and just always this comes in. I made some coffee. I made it with love, and he was just so direct, and I learned so much living under him. Yeah, it was that's how I got the start. I mean, but from there it took me in a whole many different directions. But my journey into journalism, my journeylism, was it started there just because I wanted to get out of Seattle. I was a cook. I was depressed. I wasn't living well. And I wanted to branch out and try something new, something completely foreign and strange and new to me. And I always was a good writer all through elementary school. I used to write short stories all the time. Elementary school, middle school, high school, university, always got good grades for writing and stuff. So I wanted to do something with that. And then I finally found it in 2011.
Yes, what's amazing about a conversation, and this is what I love about more chilled conversations, is there's like 4 or 5 things that came from what you said there, which spark into my brain like, I gotta know this now, and I gotta know this now, and I gotta know this. And it takes that's part of the journey of journalism, isn't it? You come to a point where you have to ask the questions. And really, in a sense, what you were saying there is you asked that question to yourself: am I going to be an expert crepe maker for the rest of my life? Spinning around, yes, I can do like this, two at a time, like a boss, melting crepes in people's mouths. But there comes a decision where you got to type into a keyboard, and nowadays this is the modern world. Well, when we were doing that, I mean, only it's almost like an age has passed when it's only been about 15 years, like 10, 15 years, and it feels like the technology's spun on so much. But you said something there that was, I maybe I misheard you, but I think I heard you correct. Like in the area you were in, there was, I take it, all of the wages were quite low because you were in the States and there's a lot of competition because there was a lot of immigration coming in. Is that what, really one of the reasons what spurred you to move elsewhere?
Well, no, it was more of well, you're right, wages being low and rent being high. Okay, so at the time I was in Seattle from 2009 to 2011. Before that, I lived 6 years up north in my college town of Bellingham, Washington, which was just south of the Canadian border, close to Vancouver, British Columbia. Um, uh, but so my pay initially, it was $10 an hour, and my rent was $725 a month. So, and I was working 10, 12-hour days, just sweating, washing dishes, being a cook, and doing all that. So it was after 2 years of grinding away at that, which I eventually got to $12 an hour for my pay, but it wasn't really much of an improvement. So yeah, I was sick and tired of just being just in poverty and sick, and like I had celiac disease, which I didn't know at the time, and my whole diet consisted of crepes, Guinness, and sandwiches.
So
and pizzas.
celiac disease. What are you keeping away
Is
from then?
gluten. It's
Oh,
an intolerance to
yes,
gluten.
yes, yes. Okay.
So yeah, anything with wheat, rye, uh, what is cebada? Cebada. I can't even know the barley. Yeah. So anything
Forgetting the
to do with
English
that.
words, is it?
I know I've been here too long,
Uh,
and so yeah. So I was getting really sick doing that, and so I wanted to get out. But you know, you talk about if immigration were a thing then, I don't know for some reason that I grew up in a small town, went to high school, elementary school, middle school in Longview, Washington, which is right on the border, right on the Columbia River, the border with Oregon. And there, even there's tons of Mexicans and Guatemalans and things. So it's I don't know why everyone made their way up north to that area, but it was just
hmm.
something. We never thought about it as like some kind of immigration thing or a problem like we have now. But I do remember the first time that why I chose to study Spanish, and which kind of really changed my life for everything, and why I'm here and all that is that when I was in 10th grade in high school. This was in 2000, 2001. And yeah, um, at the cafeteria, the tables at my high school, there was two tables full of Mexican kids. And I really wanted to make friends with them. I'm a type of personality that just wants to make friends with everyone, but I didn't know how to communicate. So what I did was I started throwing French fries at them, throwing chips,
Yeah, yeah.
and they didn't really react well to that, and they started yelling things at me. And I was like, I really want to know what they're saying because I really, really want to be friends. And so the first day of Spanish class, our teacher asked, we had us write down on little note cards, why do you want to learn Spanish? And I said, I want to know what the Mexicans are yelling at me after after I throw chips at them. But no, ever since then, once I started learning, I started
I
practicing with them.
now
I started
I
speaking.
throw more chips at them, and now I know what they're saying.
Son papas fritas, and they're calling me other things for that. Yeah, so yeah, so after I started studying a little bit, then I got speaking with them, and we all became good friends and stuff. So I mean,
Mhm,
it's a at the beginning, yes, I was kind of crass,
mhm,
harsh a bit, but yeah, that's what started that whole journey into that. But like I said, when you're like asking about immigration stuff in Seattle in between 2009 2011 at the time, didn't really see it that way. I was just the economy had tanked. I mean, this was
mhm.
after because I graduated university in 2007 2008. And that's when the economy tanked all over the place, the banking and all the
Oh, I
bailouts and all
remember.
that. So I couldn't get a job. I went to
Mhm.
Seattle. I put in 400 applications to like everything from insurance to sales to this, that, whatever, selling knives and stuff like that. Everyone wanted 3 to 5 years experience. I was like, I'm just out of university. How do I? Nope, can't. So my only what I decided was like, no, I need to go somewhere far away, work for free, and get my experience. And doing something that I love, writing, going into a country where I've been studying, because I studied Spanish all the way through high school and then into university as well. So I wanted, but I was losing it. So I wanted to go, okay, that's twofold. Do writing stuff, go visit and see another culture, improve upon Spanish, and then maybe I'd come back to the States with a padded up resume CV. Uh, but no, that didn't happen either. I went back to the States. I got rejected again. So I started traveling again to Africa and then back to South America again.
It's super brave. To I think brave or naive maybe could be the one. My experience was like, the same sort of thing. I got to the point where I really loved French culture. I loved watching French movies. And by the time I was like 26, I was like, okay, I'm going to move to France. I met a French girl. It seemed like a sensible time. Okay, that ticks all of the boxes. May as well go and experience it. But it's a really like it can be a really naive step to make in a sense because you have this idea, well, I can just learn all of this, of course, and then the reality of moving to another country and the culture shock and everything that goes with it, and then it makes you reflect on your entire life beforehand and the decisions you've made before. So it's like can be a rolling ball of psychological sort of issues that are raised by making such a big journey. But when you were saying there about the North America, on the border of Canada, don't know why so many Mexicans go up there. When I was doing Jordan B. Peterson's family tree, and I was following his family coming over from Norway, building a boat, landing in America, and then they get into New York. They're free to go wherever they want, and they go up to Canada or the Canadian border. As some of them go stay around the states at the northern borders, but most of them go into Canada. And it seems like if you can go one way or the other, some people are like, especially probably South Americans come to the southern states and go, oh well, this is no different than living in South America. I mean, they've got massive Latino communities everywhere. May as well keep moving upwards and go as far as I can. So, is it different in the mid states? Do you know? Is it different the sort of like levels of immigration? Is it that people tend to stick to I'm going all of the way or just across the border?
Well, what do you mean when you refer to as mid states, or like because that's when I hear like Midwest or something like that,
Yeah, because
or like
I
anything that's not.
oh yeah, well, I'd say anything that doesn't border on an ocean or border on another
Mm,
country. So everything from maybe Ohio across the one side to um whatever's south of Oregon. What's south of Oregon? What's that?
California.
Oh. Oh, really? Really?
Yeah,
Oh God, there
yeah.
you go. California's a
Well,
big
I see it like actually, if you go back to Pioneer Wild West days, like a lot of the original cowboys were Mexicans.
mm,
Mexicans, and I also believe like even freed slaves that came over, like they got the freedom and kind of moved west a little bit more towards Texas, Oklahoma, and into that area. But I think like how I never understood like why the Pacific Northwest, like why Washington State for at least like Mexicans. Um, I just think it has to do more with politics and stuff because
mm,
and liberalness because Washington State, we've got Seattle, we got it's very blue, very very blue.
mm,
But if you do go to the eastern part of Washington, then that's really it's indicative of like anywhere in the world. It's like you've got your urban centers, which tend to be super liberal, but they have the biggest population. So when they vote and things like that, that's how that state
mm.
tends to swing. So it's always in those urban areas that have policies that are very welcoming and things, and
Like Turkey, where Istanbul would be the liberal center and the east is all very extreme conservative as you
hmm,
get further away.
I visited. Oh, I visited Turkey. Going back to 2011, my journey. So I left Seattle. The first place I went to the Grand Tetons, visited some friends there in the mountains. That was beautiful, and Yellowstone. And then I made my way to New York, and I was in New York City for Occupy Wall Street. I got there just as that was all going off. So I was like, "Whoa, what is going on?" And then Junket Park, which park was it? Yeah, Junket. I was walking around. I saw all these places boarded off. I saw these people protesting. I was like, "Oh wow, this is kind of interesting. Fun to be here." Then I drove down south to Florida, where my parents were living at the time, just before I headed out to Colombia. I did the thing in Colombia, did the thing in Africa, came back. This is like mid 2011, around there. And then I got offered, I got an interview in Istanbul to work for a
Mm.
publication on the oil and gas industry. So they were going to fly me around to Kuwait and stuff like that, and
Ooh.
but and interview like ministers of what state and whatever who was in charge of oil and stuff like that. They flew me to Istanbul, and that's when it was in 2011. The Arab Spring was going on, so I went from like I went from Seattle all the way to New York to occupy Wall Street, and then I got a little glimpse of the Arab Spring with protests there and people throwing cherry bombs and stuff around. So
Mhm.
it was a really chaotic time. Yeah.
Yeah, 2011 was spicy. I think it was a time where the West had really started to enact the policy of nudge, like psychological nudge units that were there to change people's behavior. I mean, lots of people will say Occupy Wall Street was an expression of one of those many nudges, but they had just like come open. Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein had written their book Nudge and been part of the Obama sort of advisors for Obama, and then by 2011 were already part of the British government too. So there's loads of like, I felt like that was like 2010, 2011. 2011, we saw riots going on over in Britain as well. There was lots of people who were in turmoil. There was lots of anger. There was all of the build-up after Iraq and Afghanistan and everything. It was like pent-up frustration everywhere, and they were looking to focus that frustration. And I think a lot of people will look back on 2010 and 2011 and say big years, for change all around us, especially within this. I mean, you've now, like, at that point you're going into this world of tomorrow, this world of traveling to another place, other countries, find your destiny. So what was it like just settling down and working in Colombia then at the start?
It was beautiful because it was an internship that at the start it was only 3 months from October 2011 until early January of 2012, and I learned so much there. Like, so the first month I didn't come out of my shell. I was in the apartment. I could, I had a background, 5 years of studying Spanish, but the accent in Colombia was very much different because I understood. I learned like Mexican Spanish, and then all of a sudden I'm thrust into this world of j j j with double L's and the Y's is being pronounced as
Oh,
j.
oh wow.
And so I was like, oh, and so like for the first month I got very skinny because I could only like kind of point at signs like yo quiero eso, I want that, like in
Mhm.
restaurants and stuff. So, but once I did, after like 3 weeks or so, I was fortunate enough to I actually lived with my editor, same flat, the Dutch anarchist who would come in on a weekends and smoking his cigarettes and just going, this weekend I'm having friends over. They are going to do LSD. Please don't be alarmed. All right.
I'm
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but but also I lived with a couple other journalists, interns in the newsroom, and the newsroom was just literally outside my bedroom. And so I got to meet all these people from Australia, from France, from Belgium, from the Netherlands, and Colombians as well, Venezuelans, and we all got together and we would go out on nights and stuff like that. We used to go up on, go to parties, and I used to walk across and jump across rooftops of Medellin from roof to
Mhm.
roof. Really dangerous kind of stuff. Just, but that, and then also learning how to use my brain again after working in restaurants for so long. Like it hurt at first, like oh my god, I
Mhm.
got to think critically,
Oh
but
yeah.
I loved the challenge. So my duties initially is mostly translating a bunch of articles, stories from Colombian media and whatnot, and then making sense of them and writing my own stories from them. So I used to write 4 to 5 articles a day. So in those 3 months from 2011, October 2011, January 2012, um, I wrote, I think it was like almost 400 articles in just like 3 months. Like it was
Wow.
wrapped, like, because that it gave me deadlines. Like, well, I haven't dealt with deadlines in a very long time, but because I'm more
Mhm.
independent. But that got me into the grind, and also, yeah, my editor again, Adrian Alcima, great dude. Yeah, he was like, getting the inverted pyramid, the who, what, where, when, why, how at the very beginning. And then if anything didn't fit, like he's not, no, you can't say that. You got to take that out. No, no, you're editorializing. Don't do that. He was very kind of really spot on. So I got
Mhm.
to cut my teeth on that. And yeah, but that was only 3 months. Fell in love with it. Went back to the United States. Looked for jobs. Couldn't find any. I looked for like journalism jobs. Like, all right, I've got 3 months experience. I've been abroad. I think I've got this uh, portfolio of
Yeah,
things
yeah,
I've
yeah,
written,
yeah.
and then So I applied to like the local news station or local newspaper in some place in Central Florida, and they're like, "No, you don't have the experience." And then I wrote back an infuriating letter
Mhm.
berating them, and then they actually offered me a job after that.
You were so
It,
eloquent in what you said, in how
yeah, I
you
know.
said things. We've decided that your berating of us is enough for us to give you a second chance. It's true.
But it was just at that time where I was already applying to another internship in West Africa, in Ghana, to be a reporter for the Ghanaian Chronicle, and so I accepted that one instead. Which
Oh
again,
yes.
taken out
Oh
of my pocket,
yes.
I had to pay to and with my parents' help as well.
Was it based in Accra or somewhere? Was it?
Yeah, in Accra. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yep. I
yeah.
lived in Accra. I lived with a family.
Ghanaians are some of
It
my
was
favorite people. I don't want to be racist, but I have to say Nigerians and Ghanaians are some of my most favorite people I've ever met in my life in the world. They're just so like expressive. They're talking serious, and then they're like, "Oh, no, no," when they're talking really like joking and having fun. It's such a lively, vibrant culture they've got. I've really met some people who are just special. They've got some names as well over there. But go on, go on. Sorry.
yeah. Well, my time there in Ghana, this was in 2012, starting March 2012 until July, and it was wonderful. Like it's speaking like three different languages within my own block. Like Aquaba is like Etesen o bibini no ense ea pa poco, and then going over to the francophonies, the ones I actually got along with, a lot with the people from Sierra Leone, Gabon, Cote d'Ivoire. Like
Bien
I
sûr.
got along really well with them. They like to party.
Mhm.
I mean, there I discovered palm wine. That was delicious. um, and then I was sick every 2 weeks with some kind of stomach bug. I mean, we all ate the same soup with our fingers and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
from the
yeah,
same
yeah,
bowl. Um, but there was one day that, I mean, marijuana there at the time, I don't know if it still is, was illegal. But I used to get it all the time. And so I, I, w- I used to just go to the newsroom, which was an actual print newspaper. And so I'd walk a long way to get the trotro, which is a trotro is it comes from troppens when they used to be little cheap. They're like gouged out like um, minivans, like Mercedes vans, where they just take out all the seats and put in 12.
Mhm.
That's their buses. And so walking to there, I remember smoking a joint, and I get to the editor or just the newspaper, the office, and I was thinking it'd be another day of just kind of sitting around waiting for the power to go out and have the internet be crappy and stuff like that. And what's going to happen? But no, my editor there says, "You're going to the former president's house today.
Ooh.
You're going to talk about tribal land rights. There's going to be 20 Zongo chiefs. We're going to have chicken." I was just like,
We are
so,
all going to have our own plates today.
yeah. So I mean, I loved it. One of the weird things though is they've got some kind of soft bribery thing going on,
Mm.
because any event, I used to go to press conferences all the time. I go all over the place. I mean, African TV, like the cameras were rolling and stuff like that. But at the end, there would be a table where they give you little like treats, like little chicken and some soda or whatever, and an envelope. And in these envelopes, it said one for the Ghanaian Chronicle, one for this other publication, one for this. And depending how like tight knit and close that publication was with the organization, it could be a government thing, it could be a beer company or whatever. They give you money.
Oh,
So my editor
wow.
would give me money to take like a taxi to get to the event. I would pocket a little bit of that so I could take the trotro, the
Mhm.
cheaper fare to save a little bit. And then once I got to the event, they gave me like, holy cow, just because I'm writing for free for the Ghanaian Chronicle, I'm getting this little extra money. I was like, oh, okay.
Mm.
I'm not going to take a taxi again. I'm going to go take the public transport and just pocket a little bit so I can live off of something, because I wasn't getting paid. So that was kind of how that worked.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, that's the way. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that that's kind of in when you go to places where there's not so much of a structure. in place, that the structure that is in place is extremely lucrative, you could say, for at least its own little sphere of influence. And it used to be, it was it Ghana used to be the Gold Coast once upon a time.
Yeah.
I mean, that history is extremely interesting as well. What were you, when were you dealing with, like, mainly political stuff, or did you get to learn a bit about the history of Ghana as well?
Oh, I learned about the history and stuff. Yeah, the stuff that I was reporting on was kind of more like what they're doing with plastic waste,
Mhm.
what kind of health things were going on. I wrote a story about Ghanaian prisons. I interviewed a prisoner there, and Amnesty International was there. I talked with them as well. So I used to do all that. But as far as the history goes, yes, the Gold Coast. I believe they got independence in 1957
Hmm.
from the British.
I think that was to do
And
with
I,
some dam project as well. There was some sort of big dam project where they were having arguments with the British about who was going to fund it, and they ended up getting foreign and having there was a load. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
oh yeah, well, I don't know how it all got started and went through, but the family I lived with, it was four generations in this one house that I stayed in. The great grandfather, he was in the military, the British
Mhm.
military, and
Oh
he's Ghanaian.
wow.
Like he was like 90 something years old when I was there. He's since passed. Um,
I can't even
and
imagine what a 90-year-old Ghanaian must be like, but
oh
it's
my
probably
goodness, no,
much.
yeah, he wasn't very mobile, but he had his cane, and so when people like, I still remember when this little girl came around. Like one of his great granddaughters moved to the UK. They all have the British accents and things, and this little girl was running around, and the grandfather didn't like that. So he took out his cane and started whacking her. She came
Wow.
around, she grabbed her wrist, and was like, rah, rah. He's like, just shut up. But apart from that, no, the structure, like the infrastructure, it's like either everything was collapsing and in a form state of decay from the British Empire, or something that's taking 20 years to build in the making and a new kind of thing. So I remember one of the grandsons or sons or grandsons of the patriarch of that house took me to go visit his house that he was building out somewhere outside of Accra. And I was looking at it like, is getting along. Okay, it's got the structure and stuff. And he's like, how long have you been working on this? So 12 years.
Wow.
And it's just like barely got, so
Yeah.
it's either in a state of total decay or it takes a long time to build up. And they love George Bush there because there's a
Oh.
George Bush highway. It's actually called the George Bush Highway that I guess he constructed
Which
back in
George Bush?
the second one. The second, yeah,
Oh
yeah, George Bush,
wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So they really appreciated that. But no, my time there was bittersweet because I got to be good friends with my neighbor who was a Ghanaian. We traveled all over the country together, and then in the last 2 weeks, he robbed me of my camera, my laptop, and everything, and left me stranded 12 hours away from
Oh,
Accra, just
dirty,
like 2 days before I was about to
rotten,
leave. Yeah, so
dirty, rotten bastard.
yeah, and I got proposed to 15 times there,
Oh
marriages,
wow.
14 women, one dude, which happened to be that guy who
Oh.
robbed me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, what a surprise. I take it is, but there just must be a lot of, you must have seen a lot of desperation there as well, because I mean,
Yeah.
these countries are not just happy places full of like happy people who are welcoming all tourists. A lot of them are trying to get out of this
Mhm.
situation that they're in. And metro, I mean, we can't even imagine if you go to somewhere like Accra or Lagos or somewhere like that on that those sort of region. Yeah, they're crazy, mad places. What was it like? What was Accra like to live in? Was
But
there
Accra
places
is
you couldn't go, or?
no. I mean, it was a huge, sprawling city. Like sprawling is how I describe it because there's not like skyscrapers. It's not like you have the downtown where there's all these huge buildings. It just goes on and on and on and on. And like I said, with the infrastructure, like the buildings were uh, either like completely decaying from the British Empire, or they're just starting to be built, which takes another 12 years to get the foundation down. And also the open sewers. Like one of the reasons, like I was sick is like apart from like sharing soup with everybody with our fingers in the same bowl, was that like people who were just grilling and selling, like little kebabs or whatever, would do that over an open sewer drain.
Mm,
Uh, and so that smell, and anytime, and the garbage collection, it was so bad that there wasn't any. So people just throw plastic on the ground. And I reported on this at the time as well, because I mean they come from a culture where things used to be made of straw baskets
mm,
and all natural stuff. But once plastic came around, they didn't know what to do with it, so they just throw it on the ground. So when the monsoons, oh my God, the rains are
oh
so
my
crazy.
God. Okay.
When the
Yeah.
monsoons would come, all the plastic and shit that was on the ground would make its way to the sewers, and then the rivers of sewers would just plug up, and it would pile over, and like that's where you get dysentery, very, very, I don't know, whatever
Mm,
kind of typhoid, yellow fever. Like that's where that comes from. Is just all this crap that was on the ground that goes up. Again, I loved it there. Like I do remember like I remember I was smoking, like they love their movies, I think, because I was smoking next to a car in a parking lot. They go, no, 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 no. I'm like, what's going on? It will explode. So like, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
wow. I can't even imagine the like, I say that a lot, but I've been drawn to want to go live in Africa. If not in like northernmost points of Africa, to be honest, places like Morocco and stuff would be amazing to see. But they've been so they've been already run roughshod by their previous rulers. They weren't really left with anything. When big nations leave these places, they take almost all of their wealth and everything with them, and leave them a little bit destitute. But learning that work ethic, I mean, I've only had a couple of times now within journalism where I've got like and TNT was one of them where I know I've got to produce, I've got to write 4,000 words a day. I've got to think about subjects. I got to research guests. I got to, you know, every day is constant live show time. You know what you've got to do, and it teaches you so quickly how to go into that sort of cycle, or how easily you can get trapped into that sort of cycle in that
Mm.
sense as well, because it's a very strange world. How long were you in Ghana for? And were you doing the same sort of thing there as you were in Colombia? Were you like
Yeah,
producing
because
about 3 or 4 articles a day or whatnot?
no, it was more laid back in Ghana. I mean, it was the same kind of process and how to get into it is that I went through some kind of organization. I don't know if it was called the Humanity Exchange or something like that, where I just give them some money and then they go, okay, you're going to live here, you get a meal a day, and then we'll set you up with this internship here. So I was there in Ghana from March of 2012 until July, like 5 months or so. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. I traveled all over the country. Even I even went to the very northern region in Paga, and crossed over the border into Burkina Faso,
Oh, wow.
um, because the border was there, and I've got pictures of this too. I walked across the border and go, "Hey, look at me! I'm in Burkina Faso." That was so easy. Except once I walked back, then I go, "Hey, who are you? Where's your passport?"
Oh
Oh
no.
God.
Yeah, it works two ways.
No, I had to slip him some Sadies, some of the Ghanaian money,
Ugh,
and just like, no,
dirty
I
rotters.
just walked. I literally just walked like 10 feet over here to take a picture. But if I'm
Mhm.
walking 10 feet back, no, very, very much more difficult. So yeah, that was yeah, Ghana was from March to July of 2012, and then it was just after that that I got my that invitation to go to Istanbul to try out for that the orientation for that publication for oil and gas industry. They
Mhm.
made me. They flew me out there. They took me. They went to a party. I crossed the Bosphorus River to the Asia side.
Mhm.
They made me get rent a tuxedo, which is like I don't have
Wow.
like before even going there, I had to buy 2 suits, rent a tuxedo. I was like, oh my God. But okay, they're flying me out to Istanbul. All right, I'll check this out. After listening to what the actual job would entail, like 12 hours of just driving to every single ministry and of whatever oil and gas and talking with people, about something that I'm not really too interested in. I did mock interviews. They said my editorial, my journalistic skills, everything was that, but they said I wasn't a schmoozer, which is what they really wanted. They want to
Oh,
get
they were
they want
looking
to
for
get
me.
Yep. So what happened is that at the end of it, I knew I didn't want the job, so I was there for like 10, 12 days. And at that party, swanky party, everyone's in tuxedos, black tie affair at this resort that's across the Bosphorus, and they're just shooting champagne corks into the river, and everyone's like, with your Cuban cigars and stuff like that. I looked around and I was like, I don't belong here. I don't want any part of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I stripped off my suit, my tuxedo, and I got down to my skivvies and I went swimming in the pool. And I think that
Skivvies.
solidified it. Like, nah, this is my statement.
Yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
to do
yeah.
this. Thanks for flying me out. So yeah, that was that. So yeah, and then after that, that was in July of 2012. I stayed in New York State for a little bit. Worked at an Applebee's restaurant as a
Mhm.
waiter, and then I went back to Colombia again. I went to South America again for good. That's where I've been
Yeah,
staying.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's a good decision to make, I suppose. And a wicked experience to gain though on that. To be perfectly honest, in 2011, 2012, I would have been an anxious, sweaty mess. So there's no, and addicted to drugs. So there's no chance I would be doing any schmoozing. I would, I was off in a world of my own, trying to do things my way, and it wasn't a very good way. And yeah, that sort of journey of like being willing to shoot across the world as well, and end up in a place where you're not going to be sure what it's like, and then suddenly the whole thing's flipped around. Did you, you obviously decided it's time to go into journalism. I'm just going to look within journalism. I'm going to stay within journalism. All the things I'm applying for are leading me towards journalism. Were you said there that you were invited to talk about and write about something that you're not really interested in. What would have been your most interesting job back in 2011, 2012? What would you have really preferred to have written within journalism or focused on?
But I did. I got a chance and an opportunity, but the editor killed it in Colombia. Whereas I went up to the barrios outside of Medellin, to the very poor places where they. I mean, there was this American there who was running some kind of school and teaching kids things and donating things like that. And so it was like that was one of the times where I saw like a local kind of event. I went and took pictures and everything. I mean, the editor killed the story because it was kind of more of like this ego focused thing on this gringo that was there doing this stuff. So I mean, and I was really young and really fresh into the situation, so I didn't know how to approach it exactly. But I always wanted to make a difference somehow, and I thought that just somehow communication, writing, journalism, it's like this is how I want to make my mark in the world. I want to make a difference. I was a huge fan, of course, in college, university of Hunter S. Thompson. I mean, I didn't want to be like that, but that was kind of an inspiration. Like someone, you can do writing stuff. You can travel around the world. There's a company that pays for it. Then maybe you can make a difference and say something. So I was just really trying to cut my teeth and just try to get into the world of this whole business. But it also goes back to again my times in university at the dorm rooms when I discovered psilocybin for the first time, and I went around. I remember the first time I took it, I went into an existential thing, and it totally changed my whole perception, worldview of everything, and it was really heavy and hard time. And so I decided a couple weeks later to do it again. It was like, well, that was rough, but I hear other people have other experiences, so I'm going to see what that's like. And after that second experience, I do remember as I was coming down, just walking around my dorms, going to other dorms. I went from door to door, just talking with people like, hey, how's your situation here? What's going on? Like
Mhm.
all this empathy and stuff and love was flying
Mhm.
out. And then I was listening to their stories about, hey, where'd you come from? Where'd you do this? And I remember sitting there like, man, this is awesome. I would love to just talk to people and find out their stories and things like that. And uh, what can I do with that? I didn't think of journalism at the time, but it was one of those seeds that was kind of planted in me that like, man, I want to hear people's stories. I want to share their stories. And I hope that some change can happen in the world. That's kind of maybe the origins of that.
Yeah, I dig that. That's for sure. I mean, my origin stories concern that or involve a few moments where I took psychedelics as a way to say, okay, I need to reset the mind. I didn't know that my first experience of psychedelics was just insane because we didn't really adhere to the instructions, and I would have taken what Terence McKenna would have probably called a super uber epic dose, and
Huh.
it led me to it led me to say, okay, for the next 10 years, I'm not going to take any psychedelics.
Huh.
That's what it led me to. But then once I had got back into having a little trip here and there, I mean, if for a lot of people who don't understand how to change their behavior positive in a positive way on by using psychedelics, what you've got to do first is understand that you need to take psychedelics alone on a few occasions and not with other people in a group where you're going to have fun and you're not going to yes, you will learn that you love each other once you're all high, but that won't necessarily everybody's trips is a distraction to someone else's trip, and
Well, yeah.
people have got to really just like have the moment where they just are able to focus in on the questions they want to ask themselves, not the questions other people want to ask them randomly during a psychedelic trip. One.
Yeah, my first experience, I was 19 years old. I was in a college dorm room and I took it by myself. And it
That
was a
is
big
brave.
dose.
Yeah, that is
And
brave.
and what happened was I started thinking about all these things. What would make me happy? How can I be content in this moment? And so I was like, maybe I'll go visit my buddy Scott over here. And then what's going to happen? You're going to come right back here. Like,
Mhm.
okay. Maybe I'll go and do this. Okay. After that, what's going to happen? You're going to come right back here. I was like, what's the point in doing it? And then like my whole worldview of like what made me happy was always external and not, and not within.
Mhm.
That I crawled up into the fetal position on my bed and I was sitting there like this for hours. That it was so heavy and intense that like I kept going over all these scenarios in my head and like, well, what's really why am I here? Why are we doing these things? Like, what's gonna make me happy? No, if I go out there and then maybe if I just close my eyes, maybe just going to sleep, close my eyes. No way. All those visuals, closing the eyes, that's not going to help. So yeah, that first time was so profound, and it changed a lot within me. And that's what I said. 2 weeks later, that was rough. I didn't have a thing where it's like I'm not touching this for another 10 years. It was like, all right, I've had that one. That was like the medicine. That was like the what I needed. Now I'm going to go see what other sides this has to offer. And that's when
Mhm.
I went out and did it with other people and had those experiences, especially coming down with speaking with other people and just making connections that way. Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely wonderful. I had so many different like moments throughout my experience with psychedelics that led me to different routes. And the really I've talked about a lot about the 3 months plus where I took just basically I was like, okay, it's death or it's glory time. It's like I'm not happy. I need to change my life. And there was nothing better than doing that. It just changed my life for positive. Afterwards, I come out the other side as a journalist. So, I understand that same thing is that you want to I mean, that's to be able to speak with other people and to be able to talk with other people and to be able to communicate with other people, as you've expressed there, is like something that I think is the natural state or should be the natural state of all humans. And it's testament to the negative world we live in and the way, all of the negativity in the world that is so far away from the natural state. People build borders up between each other and don't have conversations. And really, they should be learning how to communicate. I think there's probably a relationship there somewhere along the lines, isn't there?
But also maybe like in my impressionable mind, um, susceptible to a lot of other ideas that looking back not so good is because I was feeling that, oh, we're all one, we're good, let's happy, and then I was like, I read the Communist Manifesto. That Marx, he had some. So I was I almost went, that way.
Everybody does.
Just,
You got to though,
you
haven't
know,
you? You've got to
yeah,
step into the soup to realize you don't want to step into soup because too many fingers have been
right,
in the soup.
right, yeah. I mean, but yeah, it just made me just. I was so open to so much. It's almost as kind of the problem with what open borders, liberalism. Like you become so
Mhm.
tolerant that it'll destroy you. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I was there with you, my friend. We probably, I would assume that politically we've had roughly the same sort of journey, in many different ways because we're about the same age as well, aren't we? You're in your mid-20s as well, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got a full head of hair as well.
I,
Yeah.
but yeah. So you're probably what born in the early 80s, late 70s, is it?
85. I'm 39 years
Oh
old.
wow. Okay. So right in the middle. Oh
I'll
wow.
be
Okay.
40 on March 30th, and that's the exact March 30th is Klaus Schwab's birthday. So I think I said this a long time ago, but yeah, I'm the bald-headed dude born March 30th. I got some German blood. I'm the kind of the antithesis of it all.
You better watch him. Better watch him. Better watch that Tim. He's
Yeah.
trouble, I tells you. He'll take over in the end. Um Yeah, I mean that's a really yeah, about the same age as my best buddy, and like yeah, we've all had this similar sort of vibe. We've all like been sort of driven by technology in many different ways. So like you must have been driven in the same way, especially when you're being a writer. You have to keep up to date with all of these different things. When did you start becoming a little bit more than just a writer? Because you're now working in Colombia. Are you working for the same sort of outfit throughout your time in Colombia?
Well, like I said, it started with being an intern at Columbia Reports. It was from there that I got offered a job where I am now.
Mhm.
So this is going back to 2014. So it's the second time I came back to Colombia after the 2011 stuff and after Africa. So I came back. Actually, first I went to Peru, thinking I was going to be a travel writer.
Hard
And
country.
what I had, and I was in Cusco. I was there for a month. And what happened was I ended up drinking like 2 or 3 bottles of wine a day, and then going and visiting ruins, and then having 2-day hangovers from the altitude. So I was like, well, all right, maybe not Peru. Maybe I'm not ready for this. So I called up my editor again in Medellin, Colombia, and he said, and it wasn't even to work. I just wanted to go and hang out and maybe live with them, stay with them for a bit, just kill some time. But after 1 week there, it was during presidential elections
Oh,
in
nice.
Colombia. So, and
Nice.
I saw the newsroom out there all reporting. And now there's actually, one of the guys there. Um, he's a report. He's a TV newsman for NBC. Like
Mhm.
I was working with like some really cool people, and I wanted to get in on it. And so yeah, I got back into it, and but it lasted like 5 or 6 months, and then my visa was expiring. I had no money, like nothing in the bank account. I was living off just a couple of empanadas a day for a week, looking at flights back to the United States, and then I got offered a job. So the job I have now, I mean, it's a like, with the sociable. It started. I started working for a PR company in Colombia. This is still kind of like the parent company, and then now it's turned into a media incubator and things like that. But it was this PR company, so I started doing PR. Working with clients and stuff like that. Then the company acquired the Sociable because the Sociable was it was from Dublin. It was an Irish publication. It used to
Hmm.
just talk about um, tech news and stuff like that from an Irish perspective,
Oh,
which was
wow.
and so and this in 2015 is when this company acquired it, and they were like, "Hey, we need someone here to run the publication. Who's it going to be?" I put my hand up, and everyone else on the team was like, only like 5 of us at the time. They're like pointing at me, like, "Okay, you're going to do this." And I had no idea because it was supposed to be about technology and business and things. I had no freaking clue how to
Mhm.
report on any of this. And if you go back to October 2015 is when I put out my first article, AI and the Epic of Gilgamesh. like humanity's 4,000-year-old quest for digital immortality. That
Yeah.
was how I started it. But then I also went into
You're
startups
pretty
and business
accurate.
stuff. Yeah, I guess. I mean, that was the very first story. But around 2016, I had no idea what direction to take. I started reporting on the war in Syria. Um, I was going into like, what country do we invade next? And I said Lebanon. Lebanon's the next one to fall from all these different lists of countries that General Wesley Clark talked about way back when. Like, they're going to go after Iraq, Iran, Sudan, Syria, and all these things. And so I took the sociable in so many different directions.
Mhm.
At the same time, I was still doing PR stuff. I used to update websites. I like got into HTML, and like I was trying to do all this stuff while running the social at the same time. But it wasn't until um, 2020 is when they gutted like my company. Like, we couldn't afford these things, pandemic stuff, lockdowns. Um, and then they like saying like, okay, you need to either concentrate more on PR, or if you want, you can go part time, cut your salary more than half. Like, this is like bare bones minimum pesos, like anything.
Mhm.
And I took the latter. I
Mhm.
took a risk in 2020 to be able to just, I had enough confidence in myself. Like, no, I'm going to write because of what I've seen, what's going on through the whole COVID thing and the whole great reset, and the vaccine passports, and the whole thing against liberties, and everything. I'm confident this is where I need, this is the hill I'm dying on. This is where I'm
Mhm.
going to go. Um, and so like my pay got dropped down to 2 million pesos a month, which is like what, $700 or something like that. I
Mhm.
lived off that for years, a couple of years. It's starting to slowly go up again, but yeah, I took the risk, and yeah, before that, I used to write about unelected globalists all the time. I used to write about the startups and all these little tech companies and stuff. They used to fly me out different places. They flew me out to Spain. They flew me out to Karachi in Pakistan, where I gave the final speech at the biggest tech conference there back in 2018. Like, it took me like, because I thought that was the direction to go. Like, if I want to build up the sociable and its profile, and if I want to make a name for myself, I need to go to all these places, talk about these things, I mean, give speeches and talk about business and stuff, but I didn't care about any of it.
Mhm.
Couldn't give a shit. And so it was really soul sucking. So when I got the opportunity, okay, we're going to cut your time, cut your salary more than half, but you get to do whatever you want in
Mhm.
2020. I was like,
Yeah.
I'll take it. And
Yeah.
that's what I've been
Yeah.
doing ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really weird time to get that opportunity because you have to take. I mean, we have been going. It's not only we've already had a reset. We've had a couple of resets over the past 20, 30 years. I don't like using the language that has been recently used by the enemy, but the word reset is something that we've experienced over and over again throughout history. We usually in relation to technology and a new technology completely wiping out an old paradigm. And that 2020 is certainly a time where that happened because I mean I was same thing, like, but I was doing my own stuff by then. I had forged a slightly different path, being like, independent journalist, and backed that up by working in a hotel, supposedly part-time. It was a one-man hotel, though, so I could write articles behind the desk, and no one was there to stop me
Uh,
writing articles from behind the desk and doing research. So I was often like, running around doing stuff around the hotel, then coming back and being like, "Bah, bah, bah, bah." I wrote some of the best, like some of my early good work was done while having that sort of like, I've got to accept that I am not going to be able to afford much in life. I'm going to have to live a little bit like a hermit, in many ways, just so that I can do what I need to do. And do you think that's age? Do you think that's something that happens with age? Is that you getting older, saying, okay, and now I get the opportunity. I am willing to sacrifice certain benefits in life so that I can do what I want.
well, in my case, it was like I've already I'd written a couple of articles on the Great Reset, and they went through the roof, phenomenal, like shared by everybody, and I saw all this popularity, and at the time, Google wasn't censoring the ads, so like I got a ton of money coming in just from Google ads, so I was like, Okay, all right. This is showing that I'm all right with this. And then there's an audience, and what I'm putting out there is resonating. But then Google censored everything,
Mm.
so I get nothing now. But in your case, I would be wonderful if I don't know if whatever notes you've taken from back in those days of and the hotels and stuff like that. But I think like you could like what comes to mind is like an Anthony Bourdain kind of thing. Like Kitchen Confidential, like some kind of Hotel Confidential thing. Like if you were to ever come out with a book on that, that would be extremely
It's
interesting, and
madness,
even a
mad.
documentary. Yeah.
Some of it was mad because I had this habit of having notepads where I would scribble things down, and the more erratic the more erratic my writing, the more like, oh my God, the sort of shock and the developing sort of feeling of it. I love how, and you must experience this, of course, is how when you're writing about something you feel an emotional connection to, it drives you, and it's like a river. It just like flows you along, and you can't help, like when you come around the corner and realize the next part, you just, whoa, I gotta keep going. That sounds like what you're explaining as well. But I mean, you were probably a lot more organized than me. My mad scribblings on notepads. I describe one of my first biggest articles. It had like 250,000 reads within the first like 2 days, and it was about the Theresa May's father working with a serial killer. And I explained to people when I was researching it, when I realized what I had, I spent all night. I couldn't stop. I was constantly going. I had making notes all over the place. I was so disorganized. And my housemate come back in the early hours of the morning, or about 6, 7 o'clock, and I was surrounded by paper. And I just said, "I'm a journalist." I'd realized this is what journalism looks like. It's messy. It's crazy. It's random. It's and then we get more and more focus, and with it really is journalism just learning to hone your own ability to get all of that information and collect it in an organized way and then focus it.
As you say, in an organized way, collect it and focus it because it is, at the end of the day, it's storytelling. So you've got all this information, you've got all this knowledge, you've got all these connections, you've got where things are coming from here and there. And so, yeah, it's like, I don't give a percentage on it. Like 90% of it is just all research and scrambling and notes and weird things. But then, like, when it comes to actually writing, it just writes itself. Like,
Hmm.
once you have all the information, it just goes boom, and you've always done it in a way, and you've talked about it as well of putting everything in chronological order. I'm not one to do that all the time because I still kind of like the old school of, all right, the inverted pyramid, which like what's the most important or what's the most recent, what's the most grabbing thing first, and then make your way
Hmm.
down with all the background stuff. Um, and so I've never had like the huge success that you've had with the with like a massive story coming out. I, wh- that is so well researched and is putting down like every little thing. I tend to more put things in kind of more shorter form, and then like write a bunch of stories, and then in order to kind of get another longer one, research a bit, do smaller stories, and then do a longer one. And but the thing is now is that when I put information out there so quickly, especially on X, Twitter, something like that, like just over this weekend on Friday, I did some screenshots or recorded some video of the World Economic Forum, the Sustainable Development Impact meetings with, and then so I found the one with John Kerry, put out a bunch of little clips and stuff like that. But like when you're talking about like your stories getting like boom, all these views and stuff like that. For me, it's like planting little seeds because I was the one who broke these stories on John Kerry, the First Amendment, how it's a major block to um, you know, stamping out disinformation and stuff like that, and how he wants an arbiter of truth and everything like that. Right now, like Elon Musk is talking about that. It's been on Fox News. Jordan Peterson's talking about it. Like it's been everywhere, but but when I put those videos out, it actually was last Friday, and then I recorded another podcast. So I recorded them, And then I was like, oh, maybe I should write a story, an article about this. This could be something for the sociable. But then I had another 2 hour podcast, and I just put it aside. And then I saw over the weekend how that kind of blew up. And so I'm one of those people that I, I enjoy kind of staying under the radar a bit
Mhm.
because I mean it's I don't know what it's like for you to like have so many followers and if your inbox is blowing up, if people are coming, oh
I
Jesus,
don't know it
people
is.
coming
I
after
don't
you,
know it
people
is.
people coming after you for what you're writing and like, oh, you have gotten in, oh yeah, like legal, like
Yeah, yeah,
shit, man,
yeah.
like I don't
I
know.
mean, just water though, isn't it? It's like, yeah, when it's happening to you, at first, when I was devastated when I first started getting like that sort of attention. I was like, gosh, I'm in real sheesh. I'm up, and I did panic a little bit. And I remember I was distracted with another story though at one time with the Younkerman stuff, and she had been
Mhm.
going at me
Yeah.
for ages, and then I got to I did a load of podcasts, one with Jason Bermas, one with Richie Allen, one with Tony Goslin, and they all got pulled down one by one systematically through legal people within weeks. And Tony Goslin phoned me up in the morning one time, and I remember I wasn't expecting. I was too distracted on another case. On another case, I was on another case, and I saw the telephone. It said probably Tony. It said on there because then I just saved on my phone. I remember that probably Tony. It was the first time I'd ever seen the phone do that. It was like so I answered it, and Tony Gosling was on the other side. He's a good journalist in himself. He's had such a long history of finding stuff that you're not allowed to talk about. And he was just like, this Younkerman stuff, they just had to pull down. She's powerful. You should be focused on this. And I was like, Tony, I got all of these different things going on. I go, you should be focused on this. And I think it does come down to the fact that as soon as you start focusing on something like that, it takes the power out of it, it takes the fear out of it, and you end up like just having those experiences. The first night that I was going to release an article that was about Nicole Younkerman, I was scared. And then every time after that, I'm just like, I don't really care anymore. I felt that fear. It was unnecessary fear. If someone's going to off me or someone's going to say bad things about me or employ people, because I get some really weird interactions. That's my problem, is
Mm.
that really weird interactions. People who try and just basically get into my life, plant something in my head or in my work, and then, and manipulate me in some way. I see it. It just happens over and over again. And I don't know whether or not part of that is, and part of it will be just dealing in this area of conspiracy where,
Sure.
but the other side of it is, of course, that there's lots of nefarious things. But I mean, surely you've had some form of a bit of pushback because you were already explained you feel the censorship. So what's that been like for you? What's censorship been like for you since that started?
Actually, more of it has been from within my own organization, higher ups, than anything else. That they've been my greatest critics. Um, because what I put out publicly, and I really don't, it's, I don't know why there's some kind of element of politics to it. Because all I talk about now is, and for the longest time, is just unelected globalists. People who are kind of more at the top, pulling the strings and stuff like that. But the only people who ever like pay attention to it and who share it and disseminate it, either stealing it outright or actually giving credit, are kind of the more conspiratorial ones, and then also right wing or right leaning. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it has nothing to like. I don't mention politics, even when I used to cover quite a few congressional hearings. I would never put like when who said what. I just say Congressman this or Congresswoman this one, Senator this or whatever. I would never say Democrat, Republican because I didn't care. Like I didn't even want to know. I just like this is what they
Mm-hmm.
said. This is what's happening. What's going on. So yeah, the pushback I have seen has been more from people closest to me than anything else. Even when I go back to the United States, I remember just a couple of years ago because I didn't get the COVID shot, but people around me they're like, like at the cabin I was staying at with the family and things like, oh, he's not vaccinated, you can't go here. Oh, are you vaccinated? You can't do this. Like, what's going on here? Like, so it was is really weird. Yeah, again, the people closest to me are the ones, and in my own in work as well. Like, no, you shouldn't talk about. You can't say the words medical apartheid. I go,
Hmm.
okay, can I say medical segregation? No, not that either. So it's like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
do you know what
yeah.
these words actually mean? It's like tyranny. Like
Mhm.
that was the only time that I had a higher up like step in and say, no, you can't say medical apartheid. You can't say segregation. And I was just like, okay, are we changing the definitions of words now? Like, that it just
No,
means
we are.
apart, separate.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
that was the only one time where I was just like, eh. But apart from that, like, and if you just look at comments on Reddit and stuff like that, I was they called me like a closeted anti-vaxxer, and then the pushback, the biggest one was from the ex WEF managing director Adrian Monk, who when I was writing about the circular economy and saying that it was a top-down agenda from unelected globalists looking to reshape the world in their own image. He quoted me, hyperlinked to my article, didn't say my name, didn't say the publication, he hyperlinked it and said that I was a bad, these bad faith actors. So that's like the biggest pushback that I got. And then a couple of months later, the WEF came out with a report saying, no, the circular economy, which is product as a service, that's how you own nothing and be happy, is a top-down agenda. This needs to start from the top of organizations. They said it 5 or 6 times in a report, and I reported on that. So yeah, screw that guy.
I love it. I love it. The fact is that the truth and it waits for no man. It will roll over everything, and it comes out soon after the lie. I think about the BBC doing an article about misinformation about the things like globalists and coronavirus. And at the bottom of it, it took them six reporters to write a 1,000 word article. Six reporters. And at the end of it, they used the cover that had been specially made by Hal Hefner, a really, really groovy artist of the Schwab Family Values cover from the first in the Schwab series. And they now now that that article's out, it forced whoever's in charge to write down on Schwab's Wikipedia page who his parents were. That's basically all that is down. But it does not matter if you say someone is you try and censor someone one moment. It won't be long nowadays until it turns out that you were the evil one. So we are on a path which automatically always turns out good because we're
And
telling
you
the
know what?
truth.
Those articles you put Schwab family values and everything. And then even previous to that, I think it was the uh, first of all Schwab family values that just like solidified for me. You like thinking of you like holy shit, this guy is
God,
my God, this is wow, this is a bombshell, this is amazing.
it was a fun
Uh,
article to write.
but I think before that was so before I reported on Cyber Polygon, it was yours in webs on Unlimited Hangout, was it about
Hmm.
the Cyber Polygon? I saw the headline and I saw like the first like sentence or whatever. I stopped reading. I was like, no, whatever I read now, because I'm really interested in the subject, but if I'm going to read it from you, if I'm going to report on something, I'm going to be totally tainted by what you say. And not tainted, but it's like influenced. So I
No,
wanted to
yeah,
go,
yeah, I
I
find
wanted
that.
to go to the source myself and come to my own
Mm.
things and write about it. So I think I put an article out maybe a week later
Mhm.
after you had already published. But I want to say this: I give you all credit for my very first one, like on Cyber Polygon back in 2021 or something like that. It was a week after you had already published it. I got the idea from you. I saw it. I was like, "What's Cyber Polygon?" Just went down this little bit on your article and got no stop
Yeah, yeah, I
because I
do the
didn't
same,
want to be.
man.
I didn't want to be influenced by. And that's another thing too is that I don't really read news.
Hmm.
If I do see some news in the first instance that I see the original source to whatever this thing is, I'll go there because I don't want to be influenced by the spin. I don't want to put my own biases, into that because I'm just going to agree with you no matter what. Like, oh, he said this. Like, oh, I'm going to agree with it. I wanted to get to get to it myself,
Yeah, I completely
before reporting it.
agree. I had on the Welcome Five article where I went into the British connections, just before just when I was like I was probably about two-thirds of the way through, I saw that Vanessa Beeley and someone else had done an article roughly in the area where I was writing that was about the links of people like Roy Anderson and Neil Ferguson to the foot and mouth crisis. And I was just, oh, I really want to read that article, but it will stop me on my research process, which is strict. I strictly do not read other people's work about the same subject until the end, and that is just so I can, because I go back in history and I dragnet information and put it into chronological order. I don't want to start in the future just focusing on one area, because I also find that's what stops people telling the entire story. For me, I try and tell the entire story about something, and if I get to, lots of people will start that process and only get to the first most interesting fact and then make the story about that first most interesting fact and not continue on the path. Every fact will be interesting afterwards, and you can have an article that's full of interesting facts rather than just one. But I mean, again, these are techniques and styles as well, and you cover almost everything in detail. So when you do something, you do our work looks a lot different when it's by side, because I'm a historian, and I'll write like two sentences to round up something that you'll write an entire article on. So fundamentally, you got like lots of parts where you are just explaining the details of all of these different things. How depressing is that?
It's well, it's not the most depressing. I mean, but it's something. It is a difference in style because yeah, what I tend to do is I try to summarize
Hmm.
more than anything. So, but when in doing so, I am very quote heavy, So I don't try to put a lot of my words into it, and then even maybe some people will say this is kind of lazy form of journalism because I don't. A lot of people, a lot of journalists, like if they're going to use a quote, like they'll just have one little quick quote here or there, and that's it, and then they explain things. I tend to just like this is what's said, and then I always put in big old that font, like big old pull quote, block quote of this is what's being said. I think that's important. That's kind of like what I'm pointing to.
Yeah.
And normally I put that big old block quote with a video or something. That's another reason why I make little screen grabs, videos, things. Is normally it's because I want to put that what I share on X and Twitter is I want to put that into an article to
Hmm.
further
Hmm.
explain what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I want it just to be I want visually is something very important to me. Um, when I break up text, like if a paragraph is more than one sentence, it's like that's too long. Two sentences maybe is like the longest I'll ever write a paragraph. So I want to make it just little boom, 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 and then so you can see it, and then a little bit of a rhythm to it. Boom, 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 boom,
Hmm.
boom, boom. Um, but depressing, no, because what I'm just happy like getting that information out there. Like so, a lot of times, I look at
But the
reports. I do a lot of
information's
segments.
pretty depressing.
Fence. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I do. And look, I watch all these. I watched all the panel sessions from the UN, WEF, and things like that. And then I actually read all of the reports. Like I go
Mm.
through it and read, and it's just, but there's so many like buzzwords and, just rhetoric that's just vomitous. But no, I do pull out some of the things, and I try to put it in a concise manner just to make it easily digestible for people.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've never gone into something that's entirely as in depth as something that you have, and but you know what? That's how you've got all those like quarter of a million millions of views because you take that time and do that. For me, it's like I'm always also just I don't know if it's psychological, like I just feel this need that I need to be publishing stuff more frequently. my output needs to continue. So if in order to do that, if I'm just going to stop and not publish anything for 2 weeks, the website's sitting there idle, like what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I feel this weird kind of pressure. So like what I want
Yeah.
to do is I want to put out more stuff frequently. And that allows me to explore all these different areas and different things, especially, like not just with the World Economic Forum and globalists, but also what the DARPA, what the Defense Department's doing, what the intelligence agencies are doing. So I want to kind of explore more of that and just kind of, put all this stuff out there and maybe see how all this can kind of come together. But yeah, if I were to just, not publish for a month, to me, that's like death. Like I need to
Yeah.
be publishing something. Because if I don't feel like I'm being productive. And if I don't feel like I'm being productive, I just feel horrible about myself. So yeah, I'm
That
just
is
constantly trying to put stuff out there.
that is definitely something that within my own work is probably the part that's really most depressing for me is that I do really long form articles which take like loads of time to research. The one that's coming out in the next, I've been saying last week I said it was going to come out this week, but then, with independent journalism, you don't want to stop the success of what is a quick article, like the Eric Weinstein one that was about globalism. That was about immigration and United Nations. That is like when that's got some sort of popularity, it's best not to take away. It's only one at a time. But I've been writing that new one for a year and a half, the one that's coming. Um,
But even if Johnny, even if you haven't been, like writing articles and stuff like that, for the whole time at TNT, like you said, you've been writing the monologues. You have
mhm.
been doing the work. You've been writing
Mhm.
like crazy, and you've been talking. You've been productive as hell. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
every
But
single guest, every interview.
I try and that's why I end up having to have like, especially if I'm not on something like TNT, I have to have the podcast, I have to have a selection of shows, I have to have other things to make sure I'm putting stuff out fairly regularly, because otherwise people will quickly forget that I'm there doing like I would love if the world was perfect, I would love to probably not be seen most of the time and just be busy away researching, but I just could not convince people to give me money to help me out to do that, because they don't see the product of it, and usually people are just focused in on one area, and I tend to go
Mhm.
where the information is lacking, and they don't think like that. So people weren't thinking find out who Schwab's parents were. People aren't thinking who's this Nicole Youngman on the flight list? Why is no one talking about her? People aren't thinking about all of the different. When I find something, I go there, and that then takes a long time. I would love. I'd love to get, because yeah, you're right. I'd love to get into your sort of work ethic where I could produce a definite 2 or 3 articles. 'Cause how many articles do you currently produce, like
It's
a week
about
or a
eight a
couple of weeks?
month, like maybe like two a week or something like that. It could be a little bit better, um, but yeah, it's eight a month. Um, and I mean they're not like tiny ones. I mean they're like around like
You
six
know, they're
minutes or something so to
comprehensive.
read. I mean but they're not the longest ones either. You know.
Hmm.
But when you do, I'm asking you questions. When you put out like something like Schwab Family Values, and then do you see like what other people share? Like all of a sudden they'll share on social media like a picture of some guy in a Nazi uniform, thinking that that's Schwab's dad,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
someone on the beach like in a skimpy thing, like oh that's Schwab, and then putting up that one quote like from a
Uh-huh.
book, like the useless eaters. This is what he said, like and associating your stuff with that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, but I
that's
understand that loads of people get into this sort of thing of they look for what's trending, and they don't research, they don't know anything about it. They just need to get hook on to the trend, and so they're going to do all of that. And it's I mean, the simplistic nature of some researchers is he has Schwab at the end of his name, and that has Schwab at the end of their name, they must be related, and it just goes on like this. It's the same with it's it, we got to accept that the world has always been a bit of a cartoon when it comes to journalism as well. I mean, a lot of the journals that were the most cartoonish and told the most lies probably haven't held up or in the records or been kept, so we wouldn't even know that they existed. But I think we all know what humanity looks like. Humanity looks like a load of people who are looking for attention. Less,
Yep.
do you remember like game shows in the past where they'd like, you'd have a selection of people who come on the game show who's on a little panel and they're nervous as hell about being on there because they're on TV, and none of those nerves seem to be there anymore. The world of technology has changed things. And this is a place to go on now because we're coming up to like roughly the end in the next 20 minutes or so. We'll talk for 20 minutes or so. Um, but want to talk about where we are actually, because you've now put in all of that time to build up a comprehensive view of what the globalist technocracy looks like. So, how would you describe it to people? So, sum up when I think the good first place is when you think that from your research, we entered into this new stage of technocratic globalism.
Well, I'd go back to 2016 when Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum was saying he coined the phrase "fourth industrial revolution." Of course, it goes way back before that, but what's ramping up now, and especially, I'm always hesitant to say like the pandemic or COVID or whatever because I that doesn't. It's what actually happened. Government and public-private partnerships collaborated, they colluded, they shut down all these things. They used COVID as an excuse, but that's just one step. So it's it's a multi-pronged kind of thing where that the idea is to eliminate freedom. It's to eliminate, especially with the digital stuff, online anonymity, get rid of online anonymity, install digital control grids, digital gulag things like with digital ID, digital public infrastructure, the whole programmable, surveillable digital currencies, and to basically just be an open air prison. Because, I mean, over the past few years, talking about defund the police, like how's that movement going? Okay, the neighbors will become police, the technology becomes the police, and it's a more, what you got the European Union, they want the African Union and a Union of the Americas and things like that. It's just more of a consolidation of power, centralization. You just had the UN Summit of the Future and the Pact for the Future, which was all about that stuff, especially on the digital end. Um, and it's a marching thing that's been in the works for decades, and it's towards that one world kind of government thing where there's a one world currency, an army, and people like you and I, we're not allowed to say what we want to say, and it's just to keep us all under the boot of something. But this is something I've brought up before with other um, in other interviews, is just like I don't know what the motivation is behind it. Like, especially when people who are pushing these policies, like the Kissingers and all them, and the Schwabs and the Rockefellers, who are going to be dead by the time all this becomes realized. It's like, what's in it for them? And I always talk about, like, is it their legacy? Are they just in it for their families, or like do they think they're going to live forever, ever digitally, or not? And the more I look into it, it's more of a spiritual thing, and or some kind of other like archon, jinn kind of influence that's out there that I really don't know what's going on with it. But no, there is a certain like push towards this kind of control mechanism. And when you look at the world in terms of yin and yang, and what's good and evil and things, you always have to have one. That you can't have one without the other. That's the balance of everything. There cannot be any positive without negative, no light without darkness. So no matter what, if we created the greatest society on earth, someone else would just come in, throw a wrench in the gear, or a what do they say in British? a socket, no, a spanner. And
The
they throw a
spanner in the
spanner
works.
and spanner in the works just to mess it all up, just to create chaos, because that's what the whole thing is. It's order out of chaos, order ab chaos. That's you create chaos and then you create the order out of it, and it's a never-ending cycle. It just keeps happening and happening. So that's why I feel that journalism is such a important part, and that there will always be a demand, and that our work will never be done, is because no, once you reach and like say you got rid of the World Economic Forum, okay, someone else is going to take its place. There's going to be another Klaus Schwab. There's going to be another thing. It's always in a constant state of flux. It's always history is repeating itself. So what you're kind of there is that, like, you want to be on the right side now, fight the good battle, because once you win this one, well, just wait a little bit because it's going to come around again. The pendulum is always swinging. So we're in a constant battle, and it's never going to end.
Yeah. And in that sense, if you're a journalist, then is our place within this paradigm the defining of order and the acceptance of the order that then allows others to create the chaos from and see how the state of it lies so that they know how to create the chaos, because this is a cycle. I agree with you. That's I think for a lot of people that would be a depressing concept, because you have to come to terms with the fact that this will never be over, that the chaos will
Let's
never be over.
that's to ask them to accept life and death. I mean, you life, death, rebirth. I mean, this is the nature of the world and the universe. I mean, to maybe if it's hard for them to accept, then it's because there's something inside that you can't accept what death is and what rebirth is, because this is just exactly the same thing. It's the same kind of cycle.
I could see neon lights, Schwab's image, life, death, reset. That's what that's what I can see, unfortunately. So we're in this state where I mean, the fact is that then does it matter? Are we always going to be squawking at the negative people doing negative things in the world? Is this what humanity is forever until it ends
It's only
itself?
it's in bursts and sprints. It's what the time is. You know what you must, like. What is it? Gandalf saying to Bilbo, "You must do what you need to do with the time that is given to us."
Mhm.
So if things are bad, make it a little bit better. It's not going to last forever. But the same thing is, all the bad times are not going to last forever either. It's again, it's that wheel of karma. It's the yin the yang. It's one cannot exist without the other. So the best thing to do, I'd say, is just make life better for you, those around you, love your family, and make things all better. Leave a little legacy there, and hopefully the next person that comes along, whether your children, grandchildren, or a student or someone, is going to pick up the torch and carry that on and be a force for good. But again, like I said, it's whether the bad guys might seem like they're in power now and they're all up at the top and all powerful, all mountains must crumble, all civilizations, all anything has to go down, in order that life, death, and rebirth, it's universal. So, the sooner to accept that and just realize what your place is at this time, in this moment,
Mhm.
is important. It's special, and you just got to do the best you can do with the time that's given to you.
Do you believe in that in a spiritual context? Like, do you think that every human has their certain ability that they're either using or not using, and the more of us who use the right thing will more likely see a better outcome in the world, and that
I
there's
see.
something more, and there's a grander order to things.
Everyone has the potential. Everyone can rise up. Everyone can meet the situation. Especially one of those things is, like during lockdowns. I'm going to say COVID, whatever government and private reaction to that is that you saw the rise of people that just wanted to be left alone. They were the ones who were just like sitting back and never really got involved in anything. But once it started hitting them, hitting their families, they're like, no, I'm going to make a stand.
Mhm.
This is where I'm. Then we saw it in Canada. It was beautiful with the truck drivers. We've got yellow vests in France. Like people just started rising up all over because it hit them at home. Um, do most people go through life and what's the quote from Thoreau or whatever from Dead Poets Society? Lead lives of quiet desperation, kind of just sitting there wallowing in whatever and just taking whatever comes to them. Yeah, there's people like that. You know what? I'd say that maybe in my early 20s or whatever, or as a teenager, something I might have gone along that. But no, something came along. It's like what Joseph Campbell talks about with the hero's journey. There's a call to action. You're all safe and comfortable in your own little spot. Then all of a sudden, some outside force comes along, which drives you to action. And it's
Mhm.
those people that are the movers and the shakers of the world, and for good or ill.
Mhm.
And so hopefully that we use those forces for good. But yeah, there's people who just are going to accept anything. They'll be the ones to eat the bugs, stay in the pods, be
Mhm.
plugged into the metaverse or whatever. But others will reject and try to come up with a different way of going about things in the world. And whether they die before their visions are realized, maybe their words, their ideas will be inspirational for other generations to come.
Or anti-inspirational, I suppose they could be as well. They could spur on the opposing forces to rise up in a way that would make life better. And every man's order is another man's chaos. Maybe
Yeah.
we will see their version of order and see it as completely and utterly for what it is, and then aim for our own sort of order, and that's how it works, backwards and forwards, pendulum ticking on. What do you see in the World Economic Forum? Do you see it continuing on now Klaus Schwab's going away? Is it going to continue on? Is it going to be something in 20 years' time, or will it just be broken up into policy institutes eventually?
If it's not, if it's, I think it's gonna be around. Just like other organizations. The thing is, without having the sort of Bond villain character at the forefront, it might make it a little bit more boring because, I mean, I made the case a couple months ago where they said that, well, the World Economic Forum is now going to be run by the president and the managing board. And the president is Borga Brenda, who is as boring as shit.
Yeah.
Um, no, I'm just thinking about when he was talking with John Kerry just last week, and he's like, so what we need is a global carbon tax. And then Kerry goes, carbon price. We don't like taxes here. Talking about New York. He goes, oh, sorry, we're from Europe. So it's just like, oh,
Oh.
are we going to get more of that? No, I mean, but even again, like I said, like if one comes up and one falls, another will take its place. These
Mhm.
people are always going to be around. So even if the World Economic Forum kind of shifts, maybe fades in the background a little bit. Maybe it's not so influential. Maybe it's not so headline grabby or whatever. There's going to be other ones that take its place. It's just the nature of things, and these ideas they don't die because it's apart from like I was talking about earlier about the like motivations behind this. And I think you and I may have spoken about this as well. Is that there's people with certain personality types that rise to these kind of levels in occasions. Like that's it just attracts. They want power. They want to control things in other people's lives. There's a there's a narcissistic thing to it. There's a borderline personality sort to it. But then there's also people who just kind of like are on the other side of the spectrum who don't really can't relate to other human beings and things, and then just going to plow through it no matter what. So those are going to always exist. The World Economic Forum, it can rise and go down. You got the Bilderberger group right behind it. You got, take your pick, the CFR, Chatham House, Trilateral Commission, whoever, or some even one that we don't even know about, or who wants to remain. And I have a feeling that there's someone who's just anonymous, or some group or whatever. It's just like what happened here in Colombia after the Medellin cartel and Pablo Escobar. Like he got to be such a huge gangster and everything. Like he was the head front man and everything. What happened after he died? He got killed in 1993. Dude, the drug trade, the whole thing is bigger than ever, and you don't know who the people are because they went underground.
Mhm.
So it's just gonna, yeah. The ideas they don't die. You just gotta fight in the moment.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I know that I look around and I see this whole globalist infrastructure shifting. Do you think they're rolling back in large parts on some sort of public reset, though? Do you think that they've because there's certain elements of the press, especially, who are trying to treat the Great Reset as though it was a conspiracy theory made up by people like you and I, even though they announced it and did it all themselves. Do you what do you think? Are they still just going to go along the same plan that they've been going? Is it Agenda 2030 until then and then
Yeah.
more?
I mean, that's the whole cycle of the news is like even they said the same thing about the deep state, like it doesn't exist. Well, no, actually, it does exist. Well, here's why it's a good thing, and this is why we need the deep state, the Great Reset, and all that stuff. That's always the cycle. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's gonna keep going around. I know that it's funny is that it's weird that in American politics now, especially with the media, how CNN has always been on the side of one side, but they're just ripping into Kamala Harris like crazy, and like they're exposing
Mm.
everything. MSNBC is completely like down her. Well, I won't say it. They're really involved in that crusty situation. But they they're on whatever side is like I don't know who's paying them from up top, but like they can see it like all of a sudden. All right, our reputation. We propped up this this geriatric like heathen of a thing that doesn't exist. That's a Borg for this many years. Like maybe our reputation is not so good right now.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be a little bit against them. But when the time comes, they're gonna swing back right onto that side again. And it's always about ever since it's always about playing both sides. Ever since like the Rothschilds and what was the Battle of Waterloo, that they got the information first that Napoleon had wasn't doing so well, and then they played both sides, and that's how they got control of the British well the crown, and then how they owned it through the banks and all that stuff. So it's always been about playing both sides. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
No, I think it does. Oh, I just feel that we're just going down this road where I mean, we can see what's happening. How are the normal people? You went back to America recently. You had a trip back home. How are the people there? Are they understanding there's something bigger and there's loads of crises? Because where I am, it looks like people have switched off to the exterior like noise. They've just switched it off and they're just getting on with their lives. Is that what's going on in America?
Yeah, that's yeah, switched off. That's pretty much it. Because if I was so surprised. I mean, again, I'm not a political person, but just talking about the people around me that they're politically inclined and are not afraid to say so and boast all these opinions and things, which is fine. It's but it's always this one side because if you're on the other side or if you're in the middle, then you're kind of yeah. But if you bring something up and it's like there's a cognitive dissonance. So yeah, when I was speaking with people in New York, upstate New York, rural area, but they come from other areas as well, um, they could not believe the debate with Joe Biden.
Hmm.
They saw it and they were like, "Oh my God, I had no idea how bad this has gotten. I didn't know he couldn't talk. I didn't know it was like,
Oh
what are
wow.
you for years
Hmm.
and years and years? Like, are you know?" And they hate Elon Musk for they hate Elon Musk for free speech, which is like, I mean, of course, that's not really the you can argue if he's for free speech or not. But then if you like look at like, well, no, look at the whole technocratic agenda. They want the X everything app, the WeChat thing, the brain computer interfaces.
Hmm.
Like out of all the things, it's because you don't like free speech. It's like, oh my god, like if you're gonna hate him for something, hate him for that. Like not that. It's like, oh my god. And if you even just bring up fact after fact after fact and just doing things that just go,
Hmm. Hmm.
they're just completely
Yeah, yeah,
cockeyed
yeah.
and they have no response whatsoever. It's just like there's something that goes error, error,
Hmm.
error.
I
You're
like
like, it just
watching
doesn't
that
compute.
error face. I've started initiating the error program protocol on people on a couple of occasions, especially recently, the past week, 3 different times. People we've been talking about something, they say, "Well, it's like that Vladimir Putin," and then they go on to paint Vladimir Putin as this alternative evil character that's like Hitler, and I'm like, you do realize that Keir Starmer is exactly the same as Vladimir Putin. That they're looking towards the same agenda. It's mirrored agenda from both sides, and they're both playing the same game. Yeah, all the time. And that look on their face, it goes off. And because in actual fact, they can see it. Now they can see it. They can start to see, but they
I
they
saw
they
it.
can't look at it.
I saw it back in in 2020, 2021, when I was before even the vaccines came out. I was already talking about vaccine passports, and so I was talking with someone. It was like, okay, is the vaccine safe and effective? Yes. Okay. So what is the problem if, let's say, you and I are on a bus together? You're vaccinated. I am not. What's the problem?
Hmm.
And they're like, no, you're putting me at risk. And I'm like, so it's not safe and effective. Like that dissonance there,
Mm-hmm.
because all they do is listen to the, whatever the talking head says. It just blows their mind. Like they could not grasp
Mm-hmm.
just that logic. Like you're protected. What's the problem? Like, am I going to kill you because like you took the thing, so now you're good, right? All right. Why do
And
I have to?
it's just the pin of you're not protected, and it's looks like it's been designed to be you're protected, and that thing is just they're so able to lose like all rational logic, use of logic at that moment. It's extraordinary. I think it's what many of us have not been able to verbalize properly with the people. These we're unable to say these things because even if we said them, we know people's minds won't take in what they're not ready to hear. Do you bother with that now? Do you bother trying to change people's minds, or do you just look towards saying, "Okay, I'm going to get out my information," and
What was
we're
interesting
go on.
in the States was like if someone asked, then I would respond. I won't bring it up myself. Like I'm a believer in seek and ye shall find. If you're actually interested in wanting to get to the truth and you ask questions, I'm an open book. I will give you everything of my entire knowledge of background, whatever. I'll open my soul to you if you actually ask. Most people don't, though. That's it. So if you don't ask, you can't help someone who doesn't ask for it. So
Yeah.
or you can't provide any assistance. If no one wants it, then well, they're closed off. They've already made their minds up.
You can't control them accessing that information unless they're either wanting to or in a really strange situation where, and I'll describe one of these situations. In Britain, we have pub gardens, beer gardens, of course, just like anywhere else. You've got a nice pub, you've got a nice garden outside. And the one that's close to me, or one of the ones that's close to me, is a pub that is it's all right. It's all right, but it's got a nice covered beer garden, so I can do some typing in there. And I've had a fair few conversations in that back garden, loads of people, my dog's around, lots of people trying to guess what breed she is, all of the fun things. But also some people who ask me questions about what I do for work, and then they ask me further questions. Some who then never go to that pub ever again and avoid me and walk onto the road and pass me on the pavement, and others that are just like just like, oh yeah, no, I'm completely with it. I can already work on a thing where they're like, I don't have to concentrate on it, but I know what you're saying there to me is true. But then with the vaccine stuff, there was just like a couple of times where I've been having a conversation with someone, and the times come up where we're talking about the vaccine, and the entire pub garden will go completely quiet, and everybody will be listening to the conversation and pretending they're not. And it's like an entire full beer garden of people who are just looking down at their drink, and they're looking very nervous at each other. They think, "Oh no, I hope no one asks me about what decision I made during this period, and what I think about this, and what I should do," because they've got so many points of illogical sort of mismatch when they try and work it out, that they've stopped trying to work it out. That's what they work.
That's the
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance that, and also maybe a bit of shame as well, because they were the
Lots
same
of
ones
it.
who were telling everybody else, you need to do this, you need to get on this, otherwise, no, we can't be friends. We're not family anymore. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. No, you can't come over to my house because you're like this. They're the ones who acted like that, and to hear actual truth and everything come out, my God, I don't know how to
Oh,
react to
I
that.
had one amazing conversation with a guy, and I was relatively loud on purpose because one amazing conversation with one guy who was just he lied to me as well. I think he told me he wasn't vaccinated when he was vaccinated because partially of that shame. But then there was this other occasion where I was sitting in a big garden and I was listening to a group of students. I didn't get involved in it. Listening to a group of students, age like 18, 19, all having a conversation about which vaccines they took. And there was a level of shame and judgment within that group without there being all of them had taken the vaccines, but they all were like knew that they didn't know what was going on. You could sense that feeling that they weren't really sure what they had done, and they were looking for
Mm.
other people to explain to them what they had done because they still haven't rationalized it. And the thing is about these events is usually takes a little bit of time for the echo to really have effect and for someone to then say, there you go. I've made a mistake and I'm weak and a human, and that's what we do, you know. Whoo! But it's good. Hey, it's good that we go through. I mean, it's not good that loads of people took the jabs or anything, but people learn lessons, and then it's harder to trick that generation again. Do you think that there will be some form of another pandemic sometime in the near future, or is it going to be another generation or pass before they do another one?
They've already tried it. I mean, they've done it. So, but they're also trying to capitalize it, saying that it's not once in a century kind of thing, like disease X, pandemic X is just around the corner. And they're going to place it on what they call climate change, you know, because of a changing climate. That means that animals and things are going to be displaced from where they originally are, and they're going to spill over into human endeavors. So even if it is okay, if you go with a
Squirrel
pandemic or so,
attack.
yeah, like if some pangolin fornicates with a bat or something, um, and it bites a human, then you get the next one. But it's going to be through whatever kind of climate change narrative they have. That's how I see it coming about. So whether it's a pandemic, actual disease thing or not, it doesn't matter because the number one, like the thing on top of everything is climate change. So that's how they get
Mm.
how they're trying to control all energy use. That's how they're going to try to restrict, what
So they'll,
tying your
they'll
digital ID to your digital wallet with the
yeah.
carbon credits and things, and the carbon based money, and the biodiversity, making all that into a natural asset company and making all that stuff. It all starts with that climate change, the carbon kind of narrative. So that's where they're going. So whether pandemic as a disease, maybe not. Those cyber pandemics as well, which you know all too well that they talk about. That's another entry into it. But it's in a way, these are kind of like little superficial things, like kind of excuses into enacting something that's already been in plan for a long time. And that's the whole control, the digitalization and de-anonymization of everything on the planet for central control.
But you think that if they did do another normal health pandemic, then it would probably be the old zoonotic one too that they would use as their sort of
I
vehicle
don't
for that.
know. I don't know because they've like they've already played their cards, over the past couple of years, and a lot of people woke up. A lot of people didn't, but a lot of people woke up and said, "Never again. No, I'm not falling for this shit." So, I think it's a little too soon to go with another like actual zoonotic or biological, some kind of like sickness, illness kind of pandemic. I think they played their cards already, and it's too soon for that.
Hmm.
Um, if you look at it in terms of overall what they call planetary health, public health, planetary health especially, that's another agenda that's been going on since around 2014 or so, and that's again climate change stuff. Um, Misinformation can be what they can consider that some kind of health crisis. Do you remember like back in what the BLM protests and riots and things like that? And this is another thing I couldn't understand is like, why is it if you protest lockdowns, you are punished, you're fined, you're sent to wherever. There's all this crackdown. But when then BLM was going on, no one said anything because they said no, racial equality is like health equality. Like this is like human beings and stuff like that. So this is what we need. They can declare anything some health issue, whether it's race, whether it's inequality, whether it's climate or whatever. So they can just use whatever excuse. It doesn't actually have to be a pandemic in order to be
Mm.
something that's they call health related, like mental health or whatever.
And the harder it is to define, the more it suits their nefarious plans, because of course they can enter in a new bunch of jargon, or at least rejig the old jargon to mean something completely new, because that's what we really saw. And that's where the logical mind splits, is when the redefining of words, and suddenly you're arguing with people about experimental medical stuff that they're being given, and they're calling it vaccines. Yeah, it doesn't work like a vaccine is meant to work. Um, uh, with the cyber pandemic, because I agree completely with that. I think that the most likely thing is going to be a cyber pandemic. Do you think that's probably one of the best ways? Because quite simply, people just won't understand how it's happened, and it could, they could just use anything. They could just use any reasons.
Well, yeah, because so one of the biggest ones would be for a reason or like a catalyst for a cyber pandemic. Would they talk about is latest one is Russia Ukraine, and that's going to somehow affect us. Before that, there was China, China, China. Um, uh, but I mean, the agenda moves forward. So the um, yeah, it's always something that's coming from above. Like it doesn't have to be. Um, it's a yeah, it's just blaming one thing or another, but the agenda continues. They're always moving forward with this same thing, whether they cause it or not. And so the whole cyber thing is to, and you don't have to have it be something that completely cripples uh, society for a very long time. Uh,
Mhm.
you know what actually is going on right now in with the hurricane that just went through the United States? So my parents they live in Western North Carolina, so they're right in the thick of yeah, where Nash or Asheville, North Carolina is. They're real close to there. Um, I have not been able to communicate with them since well Saturday. Saturday. So I'm getting really intermittent messages from my mom who has to drive to a hospital to sit in the parking lot to just get 1 second of Wi-Fi or something to communicate with me to say like, "Hey,
Mhm.
I'm here. This is." If it's only like a few words, and I can't. So that is something that is not a cyber attack. That is something that's actually like a natural disaster, which can cause all this communications blackout. But once and they're in the same place in North Carolina where a couple of years ago there was the Colonial Pipeline attack, which was actually like a cyber attack. Which they, my parents again, were talking about how hard it was to get fuel. They had to get out on the lines and things like that. So whether it's a natural one or an actual physical attack, um, we can see how these things, the communication and all these networks can be shut down so quickly. And I'm just seeing it as a natural response, natural disaster to this one. And it's been crazy for me because I really didn't know. There was a few days where I could not communicate with my parents, and I had no idea what the hell was going on. And I saw all this video footage of what was going on with the flooding and everything being shut down. But that's just a natural disaster. If there was actually a cyber attack and that shuts something down, people will be looking for solutions. They'll be looking for answers, and whatever kind of this is what the cyber polygon people war game about. Like, okay, so if this happens, here's our solution. What's our solution? We need more
Mhm.
control over these digital infrastructures. We need more control. Everyone has to have a digital ID to get on the internet. know who's coming from where, so we can find out where attacks are and things like that. So it's coming from all angles, and we get a glimpse of it, whether it's natural or pre-planned.
Okay, coming up to the end, then what do you think our future looks like? Is it a mixture of Brave New World, 1984, and all of the other dystopias? Is it the World Economic Forum, mega cities of the future, run with C40 mayors who everything's decentralized? Is it one where the people are either city dwellers or they're hunted down outside? What type of world do we live in the
I
future?
think the type of world that we're going to live in is what we choose for ourselves and what we make of it. The plan, if it were to go to the unelected globalists and all the other powers that be, would be to put us all in this little open air prison digital system. And they always talk about how to get there would be like through some kind of black swan event or something like that. I would say that we could have our own white swan event if
Mm.
that's the thing. If that's the opposite to what a black swan event is, a white swan event. Some kind of thing where we just look up and decide we're not taking this anymore. I've been bashed around. Maybe you're a family person, and you've been like maybe you went along with lockdowns, maybe you went along with the vaccination protocols, proof of vaccination, because you were saying something like, "Well, I've got a family. I can't move out of here. Like I'm trying to do what's best for me and mine and my family and things." But if you get constantly pushed and shoved into a corner, um, then that raging bull inside comes out. So, with the future it has, yes, there is a plan to enslave every person on Earth. The thing is, I do believe in the human spirit. I do believe that even though I saw it falter at times in the past few years, I saw other people rise up and do extraordinary things. And so that's what gives me hope in humanity. And that's what I think that, when the time comes, there's going to be another figurehead that pops up. Or not even, it doesn't have to be just one person. It could be a whole movement of lots of people. But something is going to rise up and counter that, because talking about pendulums and balances and the swings of power, it can't be that bad for so long. Eventually it's going to have to come up again.
I also have a little hope of the same in especially in context to how the technologies that they perceive in the future get implemented and how they can suddenly be used or utilized by very savvy people to turn a new system or against a system. I do think that the powerful technologies they're dealing with, they assume that at some point they'll be able to keep control and gain control over it. But this is a very slow process of lots of tech evangelism, and there's a lot that can go wrong with evangelism. And eventually, they can't get to the next stage, which leaves everybody on a more even keel and very. I mean, the world isn't all full of bad people. There's a lot of good people doing a lot of good stuff. So I do have that hope. Um, and I do pray that it's like that. I do worry though, because of course the world that people are going to be leaving to their children is one which looks like it's on fire at the moment. So if I was popping my clogs right now, I wouldn't be very happy about.
That's what I hear from my own father and uncles, elders and things, that they're like, I'm so happy I'm about to leave this world. I'm sorry that
Mm.
you've been handed what's going on now, but it's like they made their wealth. They were able to live in a time where you could just not go to college or university. You graduate high school, you could support a whole family. The wife didn't have to work and things like that. And that whole world it's been fleeting and it's been gone. And so they go to me like, well, I'm old. Sorry, you guys got to deal with this shit now.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, again, I don't think. No, I do find some silver linings. I don't find any hope in government and things. I don't find it's going to be some kind of I think some revolution of some sort within the people. Not revolution like to overthrow governments and things, but just to just wake up and just realize what the hell's going on, and just do what's best for you, and then just say no to all this other crazy BS.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to end it. Say no to all this other crazy BS. So, at the end now, Tim, do you want to tell people, number one, where can they find you? Where can they best be contacted on the various platforms? What should people look out for your stuff? And have you got anything planned for the future? Have you, are you considering maybe you setting up your own podcast or the like?
And that's a really good point about the podcast because I've been in talks with some people and some that you know and some that you don't, and or maybe I don't. And that I find more of it is future focused in podcasts and video like this. Even just over the last week or so, I started giving little updates on video, just sitting here on
Mhm.
and putting 2 minute clips out on X, just kind of doing that. But where to find me? Physically, if you want to go up to a mountain outside of Medellin, Colombia, that's where I am physically. But online, it's at the website is sociable.co, like you always used to say, not com, sociable.co. And then on X, at Tim Hinchliffe, and then at Sociable as well. Those are the main ones. I'm also on Gab and Getter. I don't really post too much there, but it's the exact same name as well, at Tim Hinchliffe. So I'm there as well. Um, yeah.
There you go. Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on the New Space podcast, Tim. That was good. I really enjoyed all of it, and we'll be speaking again sometime in the near future, I'm sure.
Oh, I hope so, man. This has been an absolute pleasure, Johnny. And no, I've been a fan of yours for so many years, and to be able to communicate and be and talk with you and discuss all these things and put it out there, it's an enormous treat. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Shaping a great reset for the post-corona era.